If you're a pensioner in the UK, or you've got parents or grandparents relying on their state pension, what I'm about to tell you could affect your money starting this very month. There are several changes rolling out right now that the government hasn't exactly been shouting about from the rooftops, and if you don't know about them, you could end up losing money, missing a deadline, or even having your pension pot moved without you saying yes. Stick with me for the next few minutes, because I'm going to break down exactly what's changing, who it affects, and most importantly, what you need to do about it before it's too late. Let's start with the big one, the state pension age. Right now, as we sit here in the summer of 2026, the state pension age is in the middle of moving from 66 up to 67. This shift started back in May, and it's being phased in gradually all the way through April 2028. So, if you were born somewhere in the mid to late 1960s, this directly affects you, and the exact date you become eligible depends entirely on your date of birth, not just the year. This means thousands of people who might have expected to start drawing their pension this year are now finding out they have to wait longer. And here's the part that catches people out. It's not a clean single cut-off date. Two people born just a few months apart could have completely different qualifying dates. If you haven't already checked your own state pension age using the government's online calculator, that should be your first step after watching this video, because assuming you know your date based on what a friend or relative told you could leave you seriously caught out financially. Now let's talk about something that's hitting a lot of pensioners' wallets without them even realizing it, the winter fuel payment clawback. You'll remember the chaos a couple of years ago when the winter fuel payment was restricted, then widened back out so that most pensioners could get it again. Well, here's the catch nobody talks about enough. If your annual income is above £35,000, HM Revenue and Customs will automatically claw that payment back from you through your tax code or your self-assessment return. This isn't a one-off thing either. It's baked into the system from this year onward. So if you received a winter fuel payment last winter and your income crossed that threshold, you may already be seeing extra deductions coming out of your pay or pension through PAYE right now, or you'll see it reflected when you file your tax return. The window to opt out for the coming winter reopened back in April, and if you know your income is going to be above that threshold again, opting out now saves you the hassle of getting paid the money only to have it taken straight back later, sometimes in a way that creates 2 years of deductions landing in the same tax year. That's a real cash flow headache for retirees, who are often living on fixed and carefully budgeted incomes. If this applies to you, I'd strongly recommend checking your numbers now rather than waiting for a surprise letter from HMRC. Here's one that's flying almost completely under the radar, and it's honestly one of the more concerning changes for anyone with a workplace pension. From the 31st of July this year, new regulations come into force that allow defined contribution pension pots, that's the kind of workplace pension most people have these days, to be transferred into something called a collective defined contribution scheme, or CDC, without the members' consent. Let that sink in for a second. Previously, moving your pension pot from one type of scheme to another generally required your agreement. Now, under specific circumstances, your employer's pension scheme could shift your savings into one of these collective schemes without asking you first. The reasoning given is that these collective schemes have to pass strict authorization checks and stay under ongoing regulatory supervision, so the risk to savers is supposedly low. But for a lot of people approaching retirement, the idea that decisions about where your retirement savings sit could be made without your direct sign-off is unsettling, to put it mildly. If you've got a workplace pension, now is a good time to actually open that pension statement that's probably sitting unread in a drawer somewhere and see what type of scheme you're in and what your provider has been communicating about any planned changes. While we're on the subject of pension transfers, there's another shift worth knowing about. There's currently a government consultation looking at changing the rules around pension transfers, specifically the ones designed to catch potential scams. The consultation, which closes toward the end of July, is looking at loosening some of the rules that currently flag transfers involving overseas investments as higher risk. The argument from the industry side is that too many completely legitimate transfers are getting bogged down in red tape and safeguarding checks that delay people from accessing their own money. But consumer advocates are understandably nervous about any move that could make it even slightly easier for pension scammers to operate, especially when pension scams have been a growing problem for years and have already cost retirees life-changing sums of money. So, if anyone contacts you out of the blue about moving your pension, especially anything involving an overseas investment opportunity, this is exactly the moment to be more cautious, not less. Scammers tend to move fast whenever rules are in flux because confusion is exactly the environment they thrive in. Now, here's something that won't hit your bank account this July, but it's setting the stage for changes that could affect every single person currently planning for retirement. Back in May, the Second Pensions Commission published its interim report. This is a government-revived body looking at the long-term future of the entire UK pension system, examining whether people are actually saving enough, whether the state pension system is sustainable, and what changes might be needed down the road. The interim report didn't contain firm recommendations yet. That's expected in 2027, but it's gathering evidence right now on exactly the kind of questions that could shape pensions for decades. If you're someone who's spent years assuming the state pension will simply be there in its current form when you retire, this is your signal that nothing about the system is guaranteed, and decisions being shaped behind closed doors today could directly affect how much you get and when you get it in the years ahead. There's also a broader piece of legislation working its way through that's worth knowing about, even if it sounds a bit dry. It's been described as one of the most significant overhauls to pension rules in years. It introduces a new value for money framework for workplace pension schemes, pushes for the consolidation of small, dormant pension pots that people forget about after changing jobs, and lays groundwork for pension dashboards, where you'll eventually be able to see all your pensions, including your state pension, in one place online. None of this changes your payments overnight, but it does mean your pension provider, and potentially your employer, will be making structural changes behind the scenes that could affect things like fees, investment strategy, and how your retirement income gets paid out in the future. So, what should you actually do with all of this? First, check your own state pension age directly through the official government calculator. Don't rely on guesswork. Second, if your income is above £35,000 a year, work out now whether the winter fuel payment clawback applies to you, and consider whether opting out makes more sense than dealing with a tax code adjustment later. Third, dig out your workplace pension statements and actually read them, especially anything mentioning CDC schemes or transfers, since you want to know if your pot is potentially affected by the new rules coming in at the end of July. Fourth, be extra cautious of anyone reaching out about pension transfers right now, particularly involving overseas investments, given the safeguarding rules are currently under review. And finally, keep an eye on news from the Pensions Commission, because the decisions being shaped this year could affect how the entire state pension system looks in the years to come. None of this is meant to scare you, but pensions are one area where a lack of information costs real money, and the system isn't always great at making sure people actually know what's changing and when. The more proactive you are about checking your own situation, rather than waiting for a letter to arrive, the better positioned you'll be to avoid surprises. If you found this useful, I'd really appreciate it if you stuck around, because I'm going to keep tracking these pension changes as they develop and break them down in plain English so you don't have to wade through government documents to understand what's happening to your money. If today's video helped you, give it a thumbs up so more pensioners can find this information. Drop a comment if you've got questions about any of these changes, and make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next update.